It's bidirectional, right? And then what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's really understanding it is bidirectional for many people and really getting to the heart of what came first. One small example that comes to mind, it's not small, but one simple example is digestive problems and mood issues. They're very much well linked in the scientific literature. Your gut and brain are actually formed from the same fetal tissue. So when babies are growing in their mother's womb, the gut and the brain are formed from that same fetal tissue, and they are inextricably linked for the rest of our lives through what's called the gut-brain axis, or the connection between the gut and the brain. 95% of serotonin, our happy neurotransmitter, is made in the gut, stored in the gut. 50% of dopamine is made in the gut and stored in the gut. The gut, even if you think about it, physically, it even resembles the brain. So the vagus nerve is really what connects both the gut and the brain. The vagus translates as the wanderer. It's the wandering nerve. It's the longest nerve in the body. And it's the main regulator of the autonomic nervous system when you're talking about the sympathetic fight or flight stressed state, and then the parasympathetic resting, digesting, hormone balance state. If somebody's eating inflammatory foods, if they're eating foods that don't love them back, that's disrupting the second brain. That's disrupting the gut microbiome. Depending on the study that you look at, it's upwards of 100 trillion bacteria. So meaning this gut garden, all the bacteria in the gut, it's upwards of 100 trillion bacteria. And to put that into perspective, we have about 10 trillion human cells. So we're all about 10 times more bacteria than human. And this gut garden, this microbiome metropolis, influences neurotransmitters. So different studies have been done looking at bacterial dysbiosis, bacterial overgrowth, and actually influencing neurotransmitter synthesis, because your gut's such a master regulator of these neurotransmitters that impact our mood. And then obviously the foods that we eat too can raise inflammation. 75% of our immune system's in the gut too. Inflammation is a product of the immune system. So there's these neuroinflammatory gut-brain axis components to people's mood. And if you don't feel well, if you're feeling anxious and depressed and triggered all the time and you have no bandwidth, that's how you're going to show up to your relationships. And it's very much, people need to make the connection to the physiological as well as the psychological aspects of our wellness.
So are some of the main symptoms that you are experiencing this dysbiosis in the gut, this vagal nerve issue, I didn't know that the brain and gut were the same fetal tissue. I mean, that's bananas when you just say that. 95% of the serotonin, the dopamine. Is the dopamine released in the gut released from food?
The foods that we eat, and this is across the board, the foods we eat very much influences the way that these neurotransmitters are produced. So absolutely. I mean, the foods we eat, said it in a different way, we feel what our microbiome eats. Like what we eat influences our microbiome, and our microbiome influences how we feel. So it is a massive communication between, we're basically a sophisticated host for this microbiome, these trillions of bacteria, and they like certain foods, they don't like certain foods, and they also opportunistic bacteria that are like weeds overgrowing in this gut garden, and pathogenic bacteria, they like certain foods too. So there's crazy studies done in many different, all you have to do is go on PubMed and type in microbiome gut-brain axis, looking at its implication in things like cravings and anxiety and depression. And there's studies that show that certain bacterial colonies actually influence what we crave. So we actually keep going for foods that feed it. So it's pretty science fiction sounding, but it's quite actually science-based.
Yeah, it's like we're a vehicle for these bacteria, Are we going to be a ashram or a roller coaster? I think that's...
Yeah, are we going to be an ashram or a Vegas for our microbiome?
Yeah. Right, totally. Is this a microbiome bachelor party?